There's no more time to wait, says Greta Thunberg. She speaks about climate change, which will result in rising temperatures over the next years. The activist expects droughts, famines, species extinction, changing seasons and many other consequences. There's no more time to wait. If she's right, we have to hurry up. What if we don't make it? What kind of adjustments can we make to influence the climate? Are there hidden knobs that we can still turn if nothing helps? Do we still have something like an emergency brake? Let us lean back and look at our planet Earth with a little more distance. To do this, we build a model and try to identify various screws and knobs. The first thing we probably think of is climate protection through CO2 reduction. CO2 is considered a greenhouse gas, which contributes to the so-called greenhouse effect. We all know greenhouses. The principle is simple. The sun brings light and heat energy down to the plant, but the heated air quickly rises and our plant freezes again. So we put a glass body around our plant, which means that a little less sunlight reaches the plant, but the heat that comes down here lasts much longer. Roughly speaking, the theory behind greenhouse gases works in a similar way. They hold thermal energy in the Earth's atmosphere and prevent it from being radiated back into space. In this way, the Earth is transformed into a kind of greenhouse. And how do we solve this problem? Imagine the two of us sitting together in a greenhouse and starting to sweat a lot. What would be our first thought? We have to open the windows somehow. Make the greenhouse inoperable, deactivate the greenhouse effect. For the Earth, that means reduce greenhouse gases. But well, maybe we don't have that option, or we don't want that option, or we simply don't get it. What else could we do if we were in a greenhouse and the windows don't open? So what if we can't get rid of the greenhouse effect? What else can we think of? Maybe we can't open the windows, but maybe we can black them out. Put some clothes in front of the windows or coat the windows with paint so that less sunlight reaches us. A sunscreen for the Earth? Could we make some kind of giant sunglasses? Well, the pyramids are already big, but to build some kind of sunshade around the whole Earth, we lack of resources. But we don't need to build anything that big. Just like volcanic eruptions brought the Earth down to cold times, we could put particles into atmosphere that reduce solar radiation. Actually, that is an option. But do we want that? How healthy would that be for us and for the whole ecosystem, and which side effects would be there? Then there is the sun. Is there any way we can dim the intensity of the sun to affect the solar constant? The Earth is already big, but the sun, it's 100 times bigger. What should we do there? There is very little we can do. We can forget about making the sun itself darker. But there is another option, an option that hardly anyone thinks of. What if we were sitting around a campfire and it gets a little too hot for us? We just move back a few inches and soon it gets more bearable. And the best thing is, the intensity of the rays doesn't decrease linearly with distance, but quadratically. That means that if we manage to move the Earth a little further away from the sun, we will receive noticeably less solar radiation, and this way we can influence the climate. Okay, that sounds crazy. How are we going to do this? Is this really possible? Basically, the idea isn't that far-fetched. Already in 1982, it was discussed whether and how it would be possible to move the Earth away if an asteroid would seem to collide with the Earth. The motivation is different in this scenario, but the way is the same. Satellites orbiting around the Earth have drives to make small adjustments to keep each satellite in the orbit we have chosen. In relation to the size of such a satellite, the drive must of course be suitable dimensioned. Now the Earth has 2 shovels more mass than a satellite. In order to bring our Earth out of its orbit, we would need much more fuel than we actually have. Also, what would it look like if the Earth had a rocket engine? What would it do with our atmosphere? Basically, our atmosphere makes it difficult to find any kind of engine for the Earth at all. A small planet that has enough fuel and that has no atmosphere would be so much easier to move. And that's exactly the solution. We look for another planet in our surrounding which itself acts as a fuel supplier and make it a kind of locomotive and hang the Earth onto it like a wagon, figuratively spoken of course. How exactly to do this, I'll explain in a moment. Let's start with the planet we are looking for. Finding one isn't easy, of course. It must not be too big or too small, not too far away, and it needs a usable fuel in large quantities. However, this fuel doesn't have to be conventional rocket fuel, which generates thrust by combustion. Plasma or ion drives are particularly suitable when there is no atmosphere. If we look at the asteroid belt of our solar system, we find the dwarf planet called Ceres. It's the largest object in the asteroid belt. Compared to the Earth, however, it is still small. It has a diameter of almost 1000 kilometers and is therefore smaller than our Moon, which is about 3 times as large. Ceres is covered by a kilometer-thick layer of ice, which can serve as fuel. We would have to transport the components for an ion drive with a diameter of about 50 meters to Ceres. And this would enable us to move the dwarf planet out of the asteroid belt and bring it on a course towards Earth. It will take him about 2 years to reach us. Then he must pass very close to the Earth at a low speed. It really needs very small distance of about 100,000 kilometers. This would bring it much closer to the Earth than the Moon is. In such a close flyby, its mass is enough to redirect the Earth by its gravitational force and bring it on a new course. The Earth would be attracted by Ceres and thus move into a larger orbit around the Sun. On its new orbit, the Earth would have enough distance from the Sun to cause the temperature to drop a few degrees. Mission accomplished, climate saved. At least on paper. Having ideas is good, but I was interested, what do experts say? So I got in contact with Professor Ulrich Walter. He's a German physicist and holder of the chair of astronautics at the TU Munich, and he has also been in space himself as an astronaut. He is familiar with approaches to redirect the Earth, and he agrees with me that with the help of Ceres it would be possible to change the Earth's orbit and thus actually change the climate. Of course, I found this confirmation extremely interesting and valuable. But Professor Walter also has 2 important points why he cannot recommend my plan. In his view, the technical and financial effort is extraordinary and far exceeds the effort required for other climate-influencing measures, such as away from oil. On the other hand, the maneuver is risky. A mistake could have dramatic consequences. These points are convincing. The undertaking would indeed be dangerous. Ceres was closely examined and mapped by the NASA space probe Dawn from 2015 to 2018. Nevertheless, no human was ever able to visit the dwarf planet and make exact measurements or investigations. We have never done or tried anything similar. During the flyby, Ceres would also affect the tides of the sea. This could trigger strong floods. If the calculations are not exactly done right, or the calculated courses are not followed, the Earth could be moved out of the habitable zone and all the water on the Earth could freeze. In the worst case, Ceres could even collide with the Earth and wipe out all life on the blue planet. We have very little opportunity to test all this beforehand. There's only one Earth and only one Ceres. We have only one try. And what if later we discover that we are wrong with our assumptions about the climate change? Or if we are threatened by an asteroid and have to move the Earth again? We cannot perform the show as often as we want. Maybe we could even find other use cases for Ceres. For example, use its huge amounts of water for terraforming to create oceans on Mars. All in all, my conclusion is we should start on Earth, saving the Earth. We have a lot to do here. We need to generate and store more clean energy. We have to counteract overpopulation, to strengthen nature conservation, to reforest forests. Forests work like giant air conditioners. According to the WWF, around 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from the destruction of forests. Therefore, we should always look at the big picture. Sometimes you need creative ideas. Sometimes it takes crazy ideas. Sometimes it takes a new way of looking at things. Don't call anyone wise until he has proven he can judge a thing from at least 8 sides. That's a wisdom that I think of in this context. Unfortunately, we humans do not treat the earth well, and we should change that. Otherwise, we really need a plan B.